And the Lord blessed me with sobriety and the ability to try to give a second chance to others. And that's what I've been doing almost every day, since I got out of prison.
Hello, Florida. This is Joe Mullins of the Live Workshop Play Show, and welcome to the most beautiful place in the world, Florida. This weekend, we're going to be enjoying some beautiful sunshine, some beautiful weather, and some nice, warm days compared to the rest of the country that's living in the cold and the winter part of their day. That's one of the reasons why Florida is the greatest place to live, work, shop, and play. We are the model state. And some of the great things that are coming out of Florida are worth having on the show and worth mentioning. And today's guest is certainly part of that course. It's John Koufos. John, welcome to the show.
Good to be with you.
Now, John, you're with Cottage Four Strategic Solutions, and
Yes,
you
sir.
guys come up with different projects to work on. But the latest one you guys have come up to work on is rehabilitation of people that have gone to prison or in jail to be able to retain the workforce and build it stronger. Right now, the workforce in America has been a big, big subject. It's been a big challenge finding people that are working. Of course, the far left claims that if we turn around and get rid of all the immigrants, that we're not going to have workers. But there's another class of workers that people are forgetting and tending to overlook. And that's the people who've been incarcerated or imprisoned, that workforce. When they come back out, they've shown and they've proved that they're ready to come back into the world. That's a whole nother workforce that we're not paying attention to. John, let's talk a little bit about that and some of the solutions you guys are offering.
Sure, and thank you for having me on. This is work I've done for a number of years. In New Jersey, I built a very large program to do this. Then I helped President Trump pass the First Step Act, did a lot of work in that world. We did a lot of second chance hiring work in the first Trump term, and we're picking it up again in this term. And what happens is we have a place in society where the economy is really hot. Think Florida, right? But the workforce just can't meet the demand. So what happens is you end up having all of these folks who just so happen to have a criminal record. When I say it like that, it's really important that your viewers understand what we're doing here. We're not looking to partner with law enforcement to give every single person with every single offense who may still be in the throes of addiction a job. That's not what we're looking to do here. What we're looking to do is to find the best qualified applicants who meet all employer requirements, who may just so happen to have a criminal record and want a new way of life. And it probably won't surprise you, Joe, to know that Florida is out in front on this. So what happened was I'd been working in Florida for a number of years on public safety initiatives. And you have an exceptional Department of Corrections Secretary, Ricky Dixon. And you also have an exceptional Chamber of Commerce, the Florida Chamber of Commerce. So your work down there, just this general ecosystem, attracted the attention of J.P. Morgan. J.P. Morgan said, John, you do these second chance hiring projects around the country. What do you think about Florida? And the funny part was at first I was like, well, Florida is not exactly a felon-friendly environment. Are we sure we want to start there? And they said, well, what do you think? And I said, you know what? Ricky Dixon's so fantastic down there. The governor has created pathways to the right type of opportunity consistent with public safety. Let's do it. So we launched Retaining Talent down in Florida.
John, we're talking about hiring someone who's gotten something's happened wrong in their life at one point. Now, I'm going to share something. I'm 14 years in recovery. Certainly before the 14 years, things went wrong in my life. I never got arrested. I never got incarcerated, but I had challenges in my life. I was just lucky. But I met a guy, ironically, just yesterday. I was talking to him at an event in Mar-a-Lago, and he was sharing with me, it was a lieutenant colonel. When he got back from Vietnam, there was so much trauma, so much PTSD. He started smoking pot. It was in that era, and he got arrested with a lot of pot on him. He was actually buying it for himself, self-consumption. But back then, that was the amount that triggered to dealing, which, that amount's been moved. It's been justified. It's been talked about. I certainly know in my addiction, I'm a businessman. I'd always wanted to go out and buy the most so I could get the best price. I wasn't dealing it. I wasn't going out selling it. I was turning around thinking that. So, and I told him, I said, he whispered over to me, I've been incarcerated. I was arrested. I've been to prison. And I looked at him and I said, that's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. We're all about second chances in this country. This country was built on second chances. People coming from a country that they were casted out of and coming and getting a second chance. So, especially with our own people, we were talking about immigration and some of the people coming over. And of course, the crazies that want them in here, undocumented, unverified, say, oh, we're going to be impacted by our labor force. They're forgetting about our own labor force, this group that needs the opportunity to come back and make a living.
That's right. That's right. Thank you for sharing your story of recovery. I, too, am in recovery from alcohol abuse myself. And, I think you really hit the nail on the head is that what we have here, we have a whole bunch of people who want to work, right? Not everybody, of course, but nobody, there's never 100% of anything, Joe, right? So you can go into the prison system and there's some people that wouldn't take a second chance if you gave it to them on a silver platter, but that's the minority. So the idea is if you can address these issues, some people call them social determinants of health. In this context, I call them social determinants of work, right? If we can do that, we're going to build a workforce. So Florida, light years ahead of so many other states. There's a video I shared with you, which is on my YouTube channel. We film behind the wall. Florida's got this coding program, right? Out in Ocala and Crawfordville, right? Where inmates are learning like real computer skills, right? Not just word processing and things that you need to basically integrate, but talking about how do you code, right? How do you use AI? How do you use generative AI? They have masonry programs that are subject to statewide competitions, cooking programs, etc. So they have honor dorms now. And this is thanks to the leadership, candidly, of Ricky Dixon. But you have something else really special in Florida, two other buckets of things. Number one, you have the Florida Chamber of Commerce, who are incredibly interested in this issue, right? The Future of Work report that they put out showed, hundreds of thousands of jobs that you're going to be short no matter what happens in Florida, right? They've been wonderful. The Florida Foundation for Correctional Excellence, which is a state-created nonprofit to provide some of these ancillary services, has returned tremendous dividends in public safety, right? Because what we're doing is creating work-ready candidates. And I think that's where Florida is so far ahead of other states here. What you have now, if you go into a Florida prison, you're seeing the highest level of CDL training, of manufacturing training, of coding training, things like that. And you're seeing employers around the country, around the state, hiring these folks, sometimes from work release. We covered it. We have this, if you go to retainingtalent.org, right on there, there's essentially an hour-long a documentary of me being the poor man's Anthony Bourdain running around Florida, right, covering these employers, covering these candidates. And you start to see that if you want a second chance, Florida's the place for it. If you don't want a second chance, Florida's probably also the place. They got a place for you too in Florida Department of Corrections if you don't, right? And that's the beauty of it, is that it's public safety driven, Joe, to respond to a uniquely hot economy.
John, what would you say to the business owner or the average person that deals with that business that says once a thief, always a thief, or once a criminal, always a criminal? I mean, there is people with that attitude and that mentality still. How would you address that?
Yeah, and that's the overwhelming minority of folks. And I think I would tell them, trust your law enforcement agencies, right? Florida Department of Corrections also is in control of probation, right? Which is different than in some other states. Probation might be a completely different entity. So Ricky Dixon's crew has the ability to help businesses identify the best candidates themselves, right, as they come out or if they're on probation. So you have that. So I say trust law enforcement. Second, the Society for Human Resources Management did a massive study, right? And they had a Getting Talent Back to Work pledge. They did it with JP Morgan. Koch Industries was a part of it. And what they found was that when you do this hiring process right, meaning that you have to hire the right type of person, just like you would for anything else, most of the natural knee-jerk worries sparking lawsuits, or the person's going to do a lousy job, they're not going to show up, those actually don't bear out. And I think when you break it down, it makes sense, right, Joe? Because most of the folks with criminal records are people that the doors are shut to them. So if you came out, you paid your debt to society, and you want to be part of society again, and the doors are shut to you, if anybody opens the door to you, your loyalty is naturally going to increase. And we've seen that around the country. The other fascinating thing in Florida is obviously a very business-friendly state, and it has tremendous protections for businesses that hire people with records. So the negligent hiring protections in Florida are very, very strong. As long as an employer does a background check and doesn't place the candidate in a job directly related to that issue, right, you enjoy presumptive protection for negligent hiring lawsuits, which, by the way, are less than 0.1% anyway. But Florida builds that in. Colorado is the other place with a really, really well-developed negligent hiring law. So you have a lot of protections in Florida. I think one of the places people fail, and I hate to say it, especially to two guys in recovery, is sometimes employers are looking for, they go to the drug courts and things like that and say, well, I had a problem at one point in my life. Let me hire a guy that has a problem. And sometimes people don't appreciate that in early recovery, you may not be fully ready for a job just yet. So where we saw failure anywhere in the country, you see folks who are early recovery usually, they fall back into the trap and they steal copper off a job site or something, right? But if you screen appropriately, you're going to do really well. And Florida has great resources to help you, help any business. And there's also a whole army of big businesses in Florida that have been doing this, that also can and sort of serve as mentors in this. And the Florida Chamber has a great list of them.
Well, I agree. And I want to go a step further. And it really asks people to think about this. When I went into recovery, when you went in recovery, I went in 14 years ago. It was very clear and very clearly said to me, do not mention this to anybody. Don't talk about it. You're a friend of Bill. Don't go open with it, because they will judge you. You will be casted out. You will not be able to do things. Then I had another guy sit there with me. He's actually the Attorney General, was a district attorney, and he was the district attorney of the U.S. attorney as well, Bobby Christine. And Bobby looked at me 14 years ago and he said, Joe, a lot of families are dealing with this. A lot of people are dealing with this. You're going to be shocked. You're not going to lose everything. And he said, as a matter of fact, I think you'll gain everything back, and you'll be able to see and have things restored in your life. With that mentality of sitting there in fear of asking for help, that's what keeps people in addiction. And addiction doesn't get any easier as it goes along. It grows. It's a growing epidemic. It grows inside of us. It grows inside of people. So one of the things, if you're really concerned with it, if you've got a family member dealing with addiction, if you're dealing with addiction, if you have a loved one, somebody, that is something he told me, somebody is dealing with it. So when you go to those people and you say, hey, this guy just happened to get arrested because of it, in this specific instant, this guy got arrested. That could have been you or I. Could have been you were one drive away and I was one drug deal away from being arrested. We just were fortunate that we didn't get to that point. So we didn't get the felon and so forth.
Well, Joe, actually, to be honest, it did happen to me, right? That's actually how I got into this work. It was 2011. I was 20 years into being a functional alcoholic, owned a law firm, tried big cases all over New Jersey. You had all the trappings of success, no wife or kids, and can't even have a good relationship with God like I do now. And was driving drunk in the summer of 2011. So what was that, 14 and a half years ago, and hit somebody. And thank the good Lord I didn't kill them, right? They lived. I was on a bender. I lied about it for 3 days till I cleared up, turned myself in. Awful, awful, awful situation. And the good Lord saved my victim from dying. And that person, obviously, I'm sure they're still going to be in pain, and things of that nature, and have some permanent injury. My understanding is they work and they've been able to move on in some semblance with their life. And that was, I pled guilty. The first appearance they would give me in New Jersey. I went right to prison. And the Lord blessed me with sobriety and the ability to try to give a second chance to others. And that's what I've been doing almost every day, since I got out of prison. And, it's funny, Joe, as we're talking, the best days of my life have happened as a felon. They really have. And now look, I'm obviously not the normal candidate who would come out of a New Jersey state prison system, right? I have degrees, I have network.
But John, I would ask you, and I said the same thing. I'm not a normal candidate of a drug addict. I got 2 degrees, a master's. I was raised in a religious family. There is no norm when addiction hits.
Well, with addiction, you are right. Right. With addiction, I am an average alcoholic. Right.
Right.
And but as far as an inmate, from a skilling perspective, I obviously have a different set of skills. Now, of course, I can't change a light bulb, so I have no actual skills that a man needs to exist in this world. But I'm good at pushing paper. But I bring that up because, even in my situation, right, where I had skills and had a business and things like that beforehand, it's tough out there as a felon. It really is. And the Lord gave me this path. And the one thing I always tell people, Joe, when I was locked up, nobody asked me for money, but nearly everybody asked me for a job. And I never forgot that. And I was an inmate like them. I was sweeping the floor, just like they were sweeping the floor in the unit. And I never forgot that. And the Lord gave me a chance to bring this message across the country, to do it with President Trump, to do it with governors around the country. And I've never looked back, because for me, this is atonement, right? I can't build a time machine and go back in time. And if I could, it never hurt that person. If I could, I would give anything in this world to do it, Joe, but I can't.
Well, and that's the thing I'm saying. We've got so many stories like that. And in addiction, the biggest thing you and I both dealt with it. It was the lying, the deceit, the shame, and it caused us to go to our addiction even deeper. So when I went to treatment, they talked about being open, being honest. So when I got out, I didn't want to say I was a friend of Bill. I came out and said, listen, I struggled with addiction. I come from the era where you suck up the pain, you keep it inside, and you move on. But that isn't healthy. It isn't good.
That's right.
I love the life of being able to talk and communicate. And I have been judged. I have been penalized. When I ran my first election, I was worried about going to doors. I said, oh my God, this guy on the radios, this radio clown was saying, well, Joe hadn't been sober long enough and he had a bad addiction. And he started making up all this stuff. And I remember I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. The second time I ran for office, he still tried the same motive. It was him personally saying, I don't want Joe to be an elected official. I think he's, I don't like him. He didn't come to me and ask me if it was okay. And I went, look, my fate doesn't lie in you. My fate doesn't lie in a person. It lies between me and God. And God has forgiven me. I can forgive myself. Nobody's going to punish an addict more for what they've done than a known addict. We do that. That's
exactly right.
Nobody is. So when I said it, the second time when I knocked on doors, I remember knocking on doors and they opened it up and they said, hey, I heard this about you. I read this about you. I looked up at him and honestly said, you know what? I think I'll go with that version. I don't remember. I've been in recovery for 8 years. I didn't get here because my life was great. I got here because I was in some struggles. It may have been worse than that, but I'm going to go with their version because it probably was worse than that. They laughed, they joked with me, and they said, I like you. You own this. And I said, that's all I can do is own it. I can't hide it. I can't pretend it wasn't a problem. I always said, the biggest thing I said to my mother when she came in that room that day, Mom, I'm not hurting anybody. I'm staying in my house. I'm not putting anybody in danger. Mm-hmm. She looked at me and she said, you're hurting me. I had to bury your father when you were 2. You're not making me bury my child. Had you and I not learned these lessons, went out and spoke about them, and we're not talking about them today, I would fear that people are still sitting in addiction and more trauma, more problems, and more things are going to occur. The fact that we make mistakes and programs like yours give us the opportunity to have a second chance. Can you imagine if God operated by no second chances?
Yeah.
Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
I mean, our listeners really need to think about that when they think about, oh, this guy was incarcerated or went to jail. Good people have gone through this. Addiction is 90% of why people are in prison. It's mental health. It's almost probably 100% when you really look at it, but let's say 90. It's mental health, and either it's drugs, alcohol, rage, or something that's happened. And I'm not saying there's not some crimes that you can't. I certainly wouldn't put a sex offender back in front of children.
That's right. Never could.
No, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't chance that. But at the end of the day, someone that's working hard, you and I live in second chance right now. I can't tell you how many second chances I've had in my life. I've got one chip. I've never relapsed, but I have had the behavior of an addict come back again and again and again. So I live in second chances. Giving a person an opportunity to come out and do something like that is amazing. Some of the biggest political achievements my county had seen was under me when I was in office. And had I not gotten that second chance, that county wouldn't have seen those.
Well, thanks, Joe. I hate to cut this short. I got to go get my little girls. Best blessing the Lord has given me.
John, how can people, real quick before we wrap up, and that is a blessing, that in our kids and stuff, how can people get in touch with your organization, or how can they support it or learn more about it?
Sure. You can go on my website, which is Cottage Four, COTTAGEFOUR.com, or just go on retainingtalent.org and you can read about the project we were talking about today.
John, I love having you on and I love your story. Would love to have you come back on when we're both not so pressed. But you know what? Nothing is better in recovery than to have our kids need us and be there for them.
That's anytime. I'm coming back anytime, Joe. Thanks, brother.
Thanks, and have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
And Florida, remember, Florida is the greatest place to live, work, shop, play, because we give second opportunities and second chances to people. This state wasn't perfect. People didn't move down to it, and it was the greatest state from the beginning. What has happened is over a period of years, we have turned around and made what God has given us the best it can be. This is why Florida has programs like this. This is why people come to Florida. They know they can come in and live an amazing life. Even in the winter, we can live a great summer, great warm. As older I get, I appreciate this warm, especially on my bones and joints. But again, Florida, because of people like John and organizations like Cottage Four Strategic Solutions, we have the ability to move forward and be the greatest state in the greatest country in the world. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon. Remember, tune in on YouTube, The Joe Mullins Show, and you can watch any episode that you want to, past, present, and some future episodes. Also, go to Facebook and tune in on the Joe Mullins page, the Joe Mullins Radio Show, or Joe F. Mullins page. Live, work, shop, play Florida, the greatest place in the world to do those things. Have a great weekend.